Hello and welcome to Homegrown KC, a podcast dedicated to exploring Kansas City's fascinating history and sharing stories from a church past. I'm your host Laura. Join me today as we explore a piece of Kansas City's history. Happy March, everyone. I hope that your gardens are doing well. My garden gives me great joy, and I was so excited earlier this month to go out and plant my seeds, which I did, and now I am waiting for April or May even when they start to sprout. It's going to be a wait. Before I dive into today's announcements, I have a disclaimer. The stories that I tell are factual and supported by primary and secondary sources. However, every opinion expressed in the show is my own and no reflection of the values and the mission of the Black Archives of Mid-America, where I am employed as the archivist. Okay, disclaimer end. I know that everybody hides away in the winter. I prefer to hibernate in the winter. But now that it's spring, I need y'all to come out of your burrows, go outside, go for a walk, go to the park, and then while you're walking or gardening or what have you, make sure that you're listening to Homegrown KC and tell your friends to do the same. We really need to amp up listener downloads if we want to reach 5K this year, which I would love to reach 5K this year. I cannot do that without your help, though, so tell everybody, listen to the show. Jazz is currently at over 3,000 total downloads for the history of the show, and the Chiefs are at over 900 total downloads for the show. I now have friends at the Jazz Museum, so if y'all will get Jazz to 4,000 downloads, I will reach out to them about a Patreon episode. I haven't done one with them yet. And if they agree to do the episode, I will make that available to everyone for a limited time. Okay? So that's your goal. You need to get 1,000 more downloads, and y'all can listen to me talk to somebody from Jazz. Also, I'm going to make the same deal for the Chiefs. I don't have any contact with the Chiefs first, let's say that. But if you can get it to 1,500 this year, I will see what I can do about getting a recording with someone from the Chiefs organization. Like, fingers crossed, I think Clark Hunt would be really cool. But, somebody, I will reach out and see what I can do. And again, that would be available to a limited time. While we're on the subject of the Chiefs, this is your reminder to please vote no on question 1 on April 2nd. In-person voting is already open, so if you want to vote early, do so. Fantastic. This question is regarding the Truman Sports Complex sales tax. There we go. So, Johnson County citizens already pay a sales tax to maintain both Arrowhead and the K, the baseball stadium. This ballot measure is going to repeal that tax and replace it with a tax of the same amount, 3/8% sales tax, except that the new tax is not going to maintain the stadiums that we already have. It's going to be used to build a new baseball stadium in the heart of the Crossroads District, which is, first of all, it's an arts district, not a baseball district. This would turn it into a baseball district. It would completely disrupt the neighborhood by removing over 20 small local businesses, some of which have just opened up their places. Thinking of Green Dirt. I don't think she's actually even open yet. Kick out people who live and work there. Tear down a church. All to make a new baseball stadium. For the Chiefs, this tax would be used to create a new football fan experience in place of the K. They're going to tear the K down. I've also heard that it'll be used to create more suites at the football stadium. I have not seen that verified anywhere yet. But I want you to really think about this, okay? Don't be swayed by all these fancy renderings that you're seeing of what the baseball stadium could look like or what the sports visitor center could look like. There's no need for a new baseball stadium. The one that we have is nice. Okay, they're complaining that it received bad concrete and it's deteriorating. Okay, it was just renovated something like 10, 12 years ago. Okay, we're still paying off that renovation, first of all. Paying that off will not be completed by the time that this, quote, new baseball stadium is built. Sorry, there's no need for a quote there. But, if you have a problem, fix it. Don't try to start over. It's being purported as, oh, it's only $2 billion. Well, first off, that's a fuck ton of money for everybody, okay? But you don't have architectural plans. You don't have anything priced. So how is it that you're claiming it's only $2 billion? I seriously doubt this, okay? With the prices as they are today, just in doubt. This plan has been proposed without the entire plan being constructed. Don't appreciate that. Don't appreciate them trying to come in and kick out all these people out of their homes. It's always economically and better environmentally to repair what you already have rather than tearing it down to build something new. So say no to this effort to assimilate the crossroads into looking like the downtown. Okay, they're two very different areas, and we love the vibe of the crossroads. And it will gentrify the whole neighborhood, pushing out those who have lived there and owned businesses and property there for generations, something that they're already fighting daily. So, all right, final ask, please say no on April 2. Thank you. All right, lastly, a dear friend of mine recently broached a topic with me. I made some remarks about the Israeli-Palestinian situation back in October during my Truman Museum minisode. I had just visited Truman Library, and this was, a few days, maybe a week after this escalation of violence over in Israel-Palestine. And my friend, if you are listening, thank you again for coming to me with concerns. I value you and our friendship. I value this conversation that we had. But this had me thinking, maybe other listeners also shared the concern that my friend had. So, for clarification, I believe that all peoples, regardless of ethnicity, nationality, sex, gender, skin color, mental and physical abilities, etc., everything, are entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not just Americans. Although, that's contested. And each nation has not only the right, but the duty to protect its citizens. So does Israel have the right to exist? Yes, it does. But, likewise, so does Palestine. I'm not anti-Israel. What I am is anti-nationalism, anti-hate, anti-terrorism, anti-genocide, anti-violence, anti-unceasing support for another group, no matter what their policies and actions. My sympathies for the Palestinian people do not blind me to the atrocious actions of Hamas. I condemn Hamas in equal measure. Remember, please, that I'm not an expert here. I'm neither Israeli, nor Palestinian, nor Jewish, nor Muslim. I have zero lived experiences that can come anywhere near equating what these people are going through right now. I have never even traveled that far across the world. I don't have a PhD in Palestinian-Israeli relations. I'm just a white girl from KC with a microphone who hates injustice. If you also had concerns based on my previous proclamations, I hope that this has allayed those concerns. Thank you. Alright, here we go. Let's move on to today's episode. This is Series 8, 2024, We the People, Topic 2, Harry S Truman, Part 2. This topic was meant to be a two-parter, and then it became a three-parter. Now it is going to be a four-parter. I apologize. I really tried not to let it, but this particular episode grew too long and I had to break it in half. Again. So the good news for you is that means I should be able to get next month's episode out to you that much faster. And I don't care how much he accomplishes post-presidency. No. That is going to be one episode, okay? This is fun, but I'm getting tired of Truman. I really want to go on to my other topics because I'm very excited for them. Also, I really did want to take summer off, and now, well, might not happen. Anyways, if you've not listened to part 1 of this topic, please do so. Also listen to topic 1, the presidential nominee is, if you have not already done so. Topic 1 is all about national presidential conventions that Kansas City has hosted in the past 124 years. I would also recommend that you listen to Series 2, Paris of the Plains. This is specifically the episodes within that I refer to as the Pendergast Saga, parts 1 through 5. Truman makes a few appearances in those episodes, and those particularly really relate to today's episode, which I talk about Pendergast and their relationship a lot. So, recap. Just in case you haven't listened to part 1 in a bit and you don't want to go back. That's cool. In part 1, but if you haven't listened, you really should. In part 1, we explored the first 30-ish years of Truman's life from his birth in 1884 to his marriage to Bess in 1919. We also looked into some of his family history. We did not discuss his experiences in World War I, and we're still not going to do so here. I don't like war. Obviously, please see previous statements. And it's not something that I want to cover at this time. If you are interested in the subject, it's very easy to find that information online. Also, visit the Truman Library and Museum in Independence, Missouri. They have a fantastic section about Truman during World War I. So, actually, before we go on, quick addition to my previous episode, part 1. I mentioned that Grandpa and Grandma Truman owned enslaved individuals. Gross. That's bad. No. But I failed to mention that Papa and Granny Young also owned enslaved individuals. Okay, here we go. So, picking up where we left off, it's June 1919. He just got home from Germany a month ago. He just married his basically childhood sweetheart. I'm not sure that they were, together as kids. Kind of doesn't seem that way, but they did know each other and were at least casual friends. Truman has had a lot of different jobs. He's worked on a farm for most of his life. His mother inherited his parents' farm in Grandview just recently. And as a newly married man, what is he going to do? As I just said, he spent most of his life on the farm, so what would you think that he would do? Obvious choice is go work on a farm, yes? You would be wrong. Don't feel bad, that was my initial assumption as well. But apparently Bess had zero desire to live on a farm. Can't say that I blame her. I love the country, but in small doses, I don't want to live on a smelly farm or have to, go out and work the fields every day. Thank God, we don't live in that era. Anyways, he actually became a haberdasher and had a shop on 12th Street with his war buddy, Eddie Jacobson. So a haberdashery is a business that sells men's clothing and accessories. I know, it doesn't sound like that. When I think haberdashery, I'm like, make hats, or you work as something like a blacksmith. No, totally different. Clothing. He sold his share of the Grandview farm to his mother and sister in order to open up the store, and he became a member of the Kansas City Club, which was a private social club exclusively for white men, naturally. The club's building is still standing on the corner of 12th and Wyandotte. I think I want to make the club and the building a future topic. The building was built... That was awkward, I apologize. The Kansas City Club was built in 1920 and is now on the National Register of Historic Places. And the club itself was established in the 1880s. But, like I said, future topic. We're actually not diving into that right now. Haberdashery didn't last long. In 1922, Truman ran for and was elected judge in eastern Jackson County. Now, I don't know the rules today, but I think, and I sincerely hope, any regular Joe Schmo cannot become a judge, honestly. I think we still vote for county judges, but I really hope that you have to qualify for a law degree first. And the more I think about that, give me a sec, I'm going to pause and look it up. Okay, so I did look it up. Hang on. You have to be a lawyer or able to pass a bar exam. Okay, that relieves my mind some. However, that was not the rule at the time, and Truman had done neither of those things. In fact, he attended UMKC Law School in 1922, so, congruently, but he failed to earn his degree. My source didn't say if he dropped out because he was failing his classes or if he stopped for, financial or personal reasons. Maybe he just got bored. However, herein, the club membership first of all, and then becoming the Eastern Judge, herein lies his association with Tom J. Pendergast, aka Boss Tom. Other candidates for the Eastern Judgeship in this election were George Shaw, a road builder, Thomas Parrott, a road overseer and president of the Road Overseers Association, E. Montgomery, a banker from Blue Springs, and James Compton, a former county judge. So, the first thing I see here is, okay, we have two people who have jobs that deal with roads, but now you want to be a judge. What's going on here? So, apparently at that time, road conditions were a very, very big deal, which, legit, still a very, very big deal. But for reasons I'm still not entirely sure about, care of the roads fell under this judgeship. And Truman, if you will remember in topic 1, also has had a job in the past that deals with roads. So, it's not necessarily a bad fit. Like I said a second ago, Truman ends up getting the judgeship. He becomes the judge. And it's all because Pendergast used his influence to get him elected. So, here is a quick recap of how the machine works if you haven't listened to Series 2 or if it's been a while. Also, when I was typing this up, I realized Series 2 was recorded 4 years ago during the COVID pandemic and lockdown. I was like, wow, that feels so much longer ago than 4 years. But look, lockdown started 4 years ago, March, this month. It's crazy. Okay, the machine. Think pyramid, okay? Pendergast is at the tippy top. Then we have the vice presidents of the organization, of which Truman became one. We'll get to that in a minute. Followed by ward leaders from Kansas City proper. And then ward leaders, all the ward leaders together. So there's some from Kansas City proper. And then there's 8 township leaders from Jackson County. Underneath them, you have the block captains. And then underneath that are the club members. So after the city restructured its wards in 1925, there were 16 wards, and they had 20 to 28 precincts per ward. And each precinct had 1 to 10 block captains. So I did the math. The numbers are wildly extreme, but it gives us somewhere between 320 and 4,480 block captains. For simplicity's sake, let's say there are 2,000 block captains in Jackson County. These leaders, the block captains, also included blacks and women, which, honestly, good. I like that we have a little bit of equality there. Maybe not a lot, but a little bit. So, Tom himself is not a member of the mafia, and most of the members of the machine, some actually were, but most are not members of the mafia. But he is using mafia-like tactics. Verbal intimidation, physical intimidation, fraudulent voting, eventually embezzlement and tax evasion, for which Tom and his highest supporters are later imprisoned. All of that's talked about in Series 2. So you might ask, why is Tom so loved within the city if he's basically a mobster? I mean, it's really what it sounds like. A lot of people think he was. He was not. But it's because while Tom and his big brother Jim, who actually started the machine back in the 1890s, while, they're running the place and acting like bullies, they're also taking care of the people. There was no welfare system back then, so they stepped in. They arranged for people to have the coal that they needed to keep them warm in the winter. They gave out turkeys at Christmas time. Tom, especially, was responsible for the open policy that the city had during Prohibition, meaning The sale and creation and consumption of liquor was not as highly regulated as it was in other places. I mean, there are still records of people getting busted for making hooch or gin or what have you in their basements. But, like, in comparison, it's really not a lot, right? The clubs are all still open. There's still money being made. And without all of that, we wouldn't have Kansas City Jazz. So, I mean, he is responsible for a huge portion of Kansas City's even current identity, but especially back then. Side note, okay, so that's how the machine works. Side note, this is unassociated with the machine. Apparently, Truman was accused, thank you, accused of being a member of the KKK. In fact, the Klan claimed him as a member. I came across this back in 2020 when I first researched him in conjunction with the machine. I don't remember precisely where I found this nugget. And while it's always a possibility, given his political track record, I think it is highly, highly unlikely. And other historians that I have read during this series agree. It's highly, highly unlikely that he was a member of the KKK. The charges of his membership to the Klan seem to be a result of a long-time political opponent's grudge. Although Burns had a segment in his book on Harry's interaction with the Klan, which I found fascinating, so I'm going to give you a quote from that. Quote, "It appears he did at least flirt briefly with it in 1922 while running for the Eastern Jackson County judge. But after meeting with a Klan organizer, Truman apparently turned down the Klan after learning that in exchange for it, Truman would have to promise not to give any patronage jobs to Catholics." End quote. Truman himself was not a Catholic, but his good friend Tom and a majority of the machine were. I think another point against him being a member of the Klan was his support of bills, while he was a senator, that would outlaw lynching and abolish the poll tax, which was a Reconstruction-era law that prevented black folk from voting because they couldn't afford the fees required in order to vote. Poll taxes were finally outlawed by the 24th Amendment in January 1964. So, like, way after Truman is senator. And unfortunately, as far as I can tell, no federal laws outlining lynching were passed until 2022, when President Biden signed the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act, 50 years after the death of Emmett Till. This act designates lynching as a federal hate crime and, quote, "The bill imposes criminal penalties, a fine, a prison term of up to 30 years, or both, on an individual who conspires to commit a hate crime offense that results in death or serious bodily injury, or that includes kidnapping or an attempt to kidnap, aggravated sexual abuse or an attempt to commit aggravated sexual abuse, or an attempt to kill." End quote. So, first of all, America failed to pass this act until 2022, which is so recent. Thank God it finally passed, I suppose. I don't know. But I think his support of those initiatives is a good point in his favor that he's not... I don't know. At the time, I haven't read all of his writings. Maybe he has some other stuff he says that is racist, but he's not so racist that he's a member of the Klan, at least. Finally, his desire to and successful desegregation of the military when he was president in 1948 is another mark against him and against his membership. He was, however, a lifetime member of another secret society, the Freemasons. Harry joined the Masons in 1908 at age 24. He rose in rank over the years, and in 1930 he was elected as a Grand Master. And then in 1945, then President, Truman became a 33rd degree Mason, the highest possible honor within the fraternity. Anyway, going all the way back to 1922, Truman, again, not a lawyer, has not passed the bar, but I guess at least he studied the law for a couple of years. He's judged for 3 years. After losing his re-election campaign in 24, due largely to machine politics and Boss Tom's rivalry with Joseph Shannon, the other big boss in KC at the time, but also due in part to some of the actions he had taken during his judgeship, which alienated Republicans, some of his own machine Democrats, the NAACP, and the KKK. I'm not entirely sure what he did, but he pissed everybody off. Mostly it's due to Pendergast's rivalry, but there are those other elements. He is not reelected. So Harry's like, you know what? It's fine. I got money. Let's do the banking thing again. That worked, right? So he opens a bank with 2 buddies. It's the Community Savings and Loan. And he is stuck with that for about 6 years, finally withdrawing from his partnership in 31. But despite his losses the year before, Truman did become the presiding county judge in 1926. In 1927, Truman proposed hundreds of miles of new roads to be built with a $6.5 million bond voted on by Jackson County. Okay, again, judgeship is overseeing the roads. It's not just dealing with courts, it's also the roads. Still unclear why. If you know, give me a shout out, that'd be great. $6.5 million is a shit ton of money. And today, that's... I don't know if I can do this, let's see. 117,234,532.16. Oh, I think I actually managed to do that. So, whew, that's so much money. Tom told him, no way voters are going to agree to this, but they did. And Truman gave the contracts to the lowest bidders. Burns says, quote, "The first group of new roads was completed so efficiently that $75,000 was left over. Truman used some of that to commission a new statue of Andrew Jackson. The rest he devoted to a huge county barbecue to which everyone was invited." End quote. So, here you go, another perfect example of machine generosity. County residents were so pleased with Truman that they approved a $3.5 million bond in 31, and in 1933, 312 miles of new roads were completed. I think another reason Truman was so adamant about contracts going to the lowest bidder, so I read that at one point the contractor got pissed, went to Tom, and Tom's like, nah, Truman did right. I think the reason he was so adamant about it goes to the lowest bidder is not just because he's frugal. I think it's also because he's politically savvy. And I think this plays out in his later political career as well. He's politically savvy. And he fully knows how the machine operates, and he's willing to play the game. So, while he portrays himself as honest, and for the most part he seems to have been, I'm not degrading him, I think he's also very willing to play the game. Some of his private writings, known as the Pickwick Papers, because he wrote them on stationery notes while he was staying at the Pickwick Hotel. Future topic. The hotel, not this exact scenario. Revealed that he allowed his colleagues to help themselves to generous portions of the county's account fund. Quote, "To keep the crooks from getting $1 million or more out of the bond issue. Was I right, or did I compound a felon?" End quote. Another quote from the Pickwick Papers that I found interesting was, quote, "What chance is there for a clean, honest administration of the city and county when a bunch of vultures sit on the sidelines and puke on the field? If we only had Tom to deal with, the public might have a chance. But Tom can't operate without Joe Shannon and Cass Welch. Cass is a thug and a crook of the worst water. He should have been put in the pen 20 years ago. Joe hasn't had an honest appointee on his payroll." End quote. Historian Robert Farrell, I think I said his name right, Ferrell, Farrell, argues that in reality Truman as a county judge, not city, was actually pretty independent from Pendergast and machine politics. Or perhaps he simply meant that Truman was able to operate independent of Pendergast. But I read his work, or his argument, as Truman attempted to act separate to the desires of the machine. And if that was indeed his argument, I have to disagree. I think given everything else that I've read about him and his friendship and the political relationship that he had with Boss Tom, Truman was a fully integrated machine man. And Truman's fellow senators and political opponents all saw him as Pendergast's man. In fact, Farrell mentions a couple of nicknames bestowed on him which support that conclusion. One of Pendergast's top lieutenants, was his brother Mike, and after Mike's death in 1929, he offered that spot in the pyramid to his longtime friend and supporter Truman, who obviously accepted. That's how he ended up becoming one of the VPs of the machine. Prior to elections in 1934, Truman had his eye on becoming a member of Congress for Missouri's new 4th District, which was centered around his birthplace of independence and which he had helped create through redistricting a few years earlier. However, Buddy T.J. chose Jasper Bell from Lee Summit, thus leaving Truman open in 1934 to become a senator instead. Initially, Truman was reluctant to endorse him as he wanted James, how do you say this? Aylward. That's going to be the best bet. Aylward, to become senator, or Representative Joe Shannon, his one-time rival, or even James A. Reed, former mayor and senator. However, when all of these men refused, he chose Truman. Harry's opponents were Jacob Tuck Milligan from Richmond, Missouri, and Congressman John Cochran of St. Louis. But, again, with Tom's help, and James Aylward, who became his campaign manager, Harry won, thus launching Harry onto the national political stage and setting him up to one day become President of the United States. As politically savvy as Pendergast could be, I doubt he ever imagined Harry as president. That is all that I have for today. Thank you for joining me as we explored this piece of Kansas City history. I hope you'll tune in next month for part 3 of this story, where we will cover Truman's life as senator and then vice president. If you are interested in his time as president, I discussed all of that in my adventure minisode on the Truman Library and Museum, available to all now. And I will also discuss that with Sadie, Troy, and Mark Adams from the Truman Library Museum for my Patreon. I was supposed to have recorded with them last week, but about 30 minutes before recording, I discovered that the program that I've been using to virtually meet with my guests no longer allows me to record for free. I have to get a subscription. So, that conversation has been postponed while I research alternatives. If you have suggestions, please reach out to me. Also, I do have next month's Patreon scheduled with someone from the Truman Farm in Grandview. And that will be in person, so, hopefully no software issues there, knock on wood. For today's episode, my sources are Harry S. Truman, His Life and Times by Brian Burns, and Truman and Pendergast by Robert Farrell. I also reviewed a lot of my notes from Series 2 and those sources. I hope you will consider becoming a financial supporter of the show if you are able to do so. There are several ways. You can subscribe to patreon.com/homegrownkc or redcircle.com/homegrownkc. You can also give a one-time donation at redcircle.com/homegrownkc or coffee.com/homegrownkc. That's ko-fi.com. You can give as little or as much as you want, even as little as $1 a month. Once you sign up, you subscribe to the show, you'll be charged that day and then on the first of every following month. If you become a patron, you get three things: an item from the merchandise store valued at $5 or less, a shout out on every episode and social media post. So, thank you, Bjorn and Joan, for your continued support. And lastly, you get access to these exclusive episodes that I mentioned, which feature other local historians, archivists, and museum curators. Everyone who simply donates will receive a shout out on the next available episode, but you do not get anything from the merchandise store and you do not get access to this bonus content. Excuse me. Additionally, if you donate on Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/homegrownkc, 1% automatically goes to fight climate change, which is something that I'm very passionate about. And the donations through Ko-fi are going to be used exclusively for new equipment. My computer, I love her, but she is now 10 years old. She's a little slow. I'd also like to get a camera like a nice digital camera that I could use to take photographs during my adventures rather than just my cell phone. And finally, the last one. You can also send me stars on Facebook, which equate to monetary value. If you cannot support me monetarily, then you can still support me by liking, following, subscribing to the show on all of my social media pages. That's Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, Tumblr. I also have a YouTube channel where my episodes are now available. Not all of them. I'm working on the backlog. And make sure you rate and review me wherever you listen, but especially on Apple Podcasts. You can visit my website for additional information on every topic. That's homegrownkc.wordpress.com. That is also the only place in which you can register for my newsletter. Once a month, usually within the first week, you'll get an email that says, here's what's new and upcoming. I just realized last week that I forgot to send out that newsletter for this month, so I apologize. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or episode suggestions, you can email me at homegrownkcpodcast@gmail.com, or you can DM me on any of my social media networks. For merchandise, visit www.zazzle, that's zazzle.store/homegrown_kc_store. I've got a lot of t-shirts, ball caps, stuff like that on there. Great for the upcoming summer. Thank you goes out to my very talented sister-in-law, Sarah McCombs, for the creation of my logo, to the Dear Misses for the use of their song Kansas City as the intro and outro music of every episode, and to local libraries which enable me to gather all my research. Thanks for listening. Cheers.
Seem to shake this feeling, and I can't seem to get you off my mind. Thought I lost my nerve forever.